Too many times we are the biggest critics in our own lives.
And not even to get emotional, but it's like, hey, don't be so hard on yourself.
Yeah.
Don't be so hard on yourself. Everything's going to be okay.
How do we keep going when we fail over and over again?
Going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm.
Today on the Mean Grit podcast, I sit down with the door-to-door legend, Brayden Searle. Who better to talk to us about grit and resilience than a person who's had 8 years of doors slamming in his face?
It's easier to have grit if you know what you're going for.
This powerful conversation will teach you how to have the perspective, the persistence, and the patience to be the best version of you. Welcome to the Mean Grit podcast. I have Brayden Searle with me today. It's so good to have you, man.
Love being here.
You are a legend in my eyes for many reasons, but I'm so glad that you made the time. On the way up, we were talking kind of about your schedule and running offices, doing door-to-door sales, and how many years have you done that for?
This is year 8 for me. So
Year 8.
Yep.
That's awesome, man.
Yep. So basically, I went on my LDS mission. I was one of the guys that got suckered into it right when I got back. I basically had one of my leaders on the mission basically said, he's like, dude, I made 50 grand in a summer. And I remember I was like, dude, were you selling drugs?
Yeah.
Like, I didn't know about sales in that way at all. And so I ended up talking with the leadership, and I was like, dude, I just knocked doors in England for 2 years. I'm not doing this again.
Right.
So anyway, ended up getting suckered into it. And then I told myself 1 year at a time, and then 8 years later, here I am. So
that's so phenomenal, because it is a grind. And one of my favorite questions to ask my guest is like, what is grit to you? How do you define grit?
Yeah, so even kind of knowing, I cheated a little bit when I was doing this podcast, and I was like, what is that to me? Because for me, especially door to door, it's more of just like going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm.
Wow.
Was my like, that's the first thing that comes to my mind.
Yeah.
As I was researching it more though, one thing that I liked is like, it is literally just persevering regardless of the circumstances.
Yeah.
So like whatever it is. And so, but to go even deeper to that, as I was like doing a little bit of like, hey, what are some things of like, how do I like to say that I have a lot of grit. Yeah. Everybody does, right? But it's like, there are certain things of like, hey, when those times get tough, what do I do to push through that?
Right.
And so I was reading this, and I don't know, have you ever heard of the story of like the bricklayers, the 3 bricklayers?
No.
So basically they ask a bricklayer, like, hey, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm just laying bricks. The other person, there's another bricklayer, and they say, hey, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, I'm building a wall. Then they ask the 3rd bricklayer, and they're like, hey, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm building a cathedral. Long story short, on the tough days, the first guy goes out first, then the second guy goes out second, and the last guy is, on all the hard days, is still building and laying bricks. And then they go talk to him, they're like, well, how are you still doing it, and why'd you quit? And he's like, well, it's just laying bricks, it's not that serious. Then the other guy's like, I'm building a cathedral, this has to get done so people can come worship, it's super important. So long story short, it's easier to have grit if you know what you're going for, right? So like if I'm just knocking doors to knock doors, it's really easy to take 50 no's and be like, I'm going home. I hate this.
Yeah.
It's so hard. I'm not doing this anymore, right? Or if I say, hey, I know I'm doing it because I want to become the best version of myself. I want to provide for my family. I am going through these hard things. Then it's way easier to go persevere through that. So it's a long-winded answer to your question, but that's like, so grit for me ultimately is just persevering through long things just relentlessly. Yeah. Or hard things relentlessly.
I really like that definition. And tell me the first one that you the super simple one that you said right at the beginning.
It is going to from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm.
Failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm. I think that is just a perfect little precedent of what grit is, because it everybody faces hard things.
Everything.
And just that example of the bricklayers, they're all doing the exact same thing.
Yep.
But that perspective is what really makes the difference.
Totally.
So I don't want to jump right into it, but let's jump right into it. What is it that causes you 8 years later to still be laying those bricks?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So for me, if we're going back to the vision, I believe, and I'm more of the religious man, but like I believe that the whole purpose of this life is to become the man or woman that we were destined to become.
Yeah.
And so for me, why I like door to door, why I like leading these guys is, for me, I went and did the hardest thing, and it's been the biggest blessing of my life to go do so many more things. And so there's 2 things. Number one is I haven't hit the spot where I feel like, oh, I've hit my peak, so I'm done.
Can't do this anymore.
Yeah, exactly. And so because it keeps testing me, it's one of the, it's like it hurts so good, right?
Yeah,
Like, dang, this
yeah,
freaking,
yep,
this
yep.
sucks. Okay, but it's like, let's keep going. It's what you signed up for, because
Yeah.
anytime I've ever went to do something that was like easy, it just goes back to the complacency, and then nobody's happy.
Yeah.
It's kind of like what we were talking about earlier. You can go find a ton of people who are making a lot of money
Yeah.
and not be, it's just not, they're not fulfilled. But you can go find people, and what I love about this is like, it's kind of the best of both worlds. You can go make good money,
Yeah.
but I'm fulfilled in the sense that I'm tested to my limits every single day. And it's like, I'm finding joy in the journey to be able to say, hey, this hurts so good, but like,
Yeah.
I'm being tested of leadership, constant sales skills, constant rejection. And then when you're at a job that's 100% commission based no matter what,
Yeah.
you don't have time to sit on the couch and feel sorry for yourself. You don't have time to like dwell on like, oh, it's like, hey, sorry, but you eat what you kill. So if you want to go keep making money, you want to go become better, then you better show up every single day.
Yeah.
And so it's those things of just figuring out like, hey, I want to become the best version of myself. And this for me, I haven't felt like, oh, I'm capped out yet. And so I'm just until I get there, then we'll have a different
Yeah.
conversation. But I love that.
And it is a unique thing because it takes a unique personality. And I was thinking about this today, whether it's you're just kind of born with that talent or if it's something that you can build. Because I did a year, and my confidence says I could go back. You and I know that I tested those waters
Sure.
and thought about going back after a year of sales, but took a different avenue. Do you have guys who come out and they sell mediocre for 1 year, 2 years, and then they hit their stride? Or is
Yes.
it usually in the first year whether they're going to make it or not?
Both. I would actually say more often than not, there's people who struggle and from their first to their second year typically double their earnings. But it's a good question because it's like there are still naturally talented people.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, it's probably just a confidence thing. It's being able to like read the room a little bit, street smarts, I
Yeah.
think. But for sure, it's also, I've seen too many people that it is a learned skill to ever say, oh, it's just like talented. Because I believe if you have good systems and processes, then you can go teach anybody to go do it. So really the two things I'm looking for is if you're coachable and you're humble. Well, I guess, excuse me, coachable and humble, they're kind of tied together, but coachable, humble, and then also just work ethic.
Yeah.
Grit. Right? So it's like, hey, if
that's you can do sucky things.
If you can get a bunch of FUs and a bunch of doors slammed in your face and go like this, hey, how are you, to the next door, pretending that didn't just happen?
Right.
That is like the cheat code.
Yeah. And I'm curious how you do that after the 50th no. Like, how are you like, okay, this next one I'm still in?
It all just goes back to vision.
Okay.
But that's the vision. If I'm going to the practical side of things, there's have you read is it called It Takes What It Takes by Trevor Moawad?
Yeah.
Russell Wilson's coach. In that book, he talks something about where Russell Wilson, anytime he would mess up, you can actually see my tan line from a bracelet. I'm trying to get rid of the tan line right now. But he would go and he would just flip his wristband and say, oh, darn, that's a mistake, onto the next one. And so I try to do everything that same way, because if it's the same thing of going failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm. If someone tells me no, number one is that I know it's part of the process, so that's okay. If they just come out and they tell me no and I didn't get a chance, I understand that. If I'm the one that's like, hey, Brayden, that was like a pretty silly pitch, you messed that up, then I either flip the wristband, or mine is kind of silly, but I always tap myself on the head. And everybody, if they're knocking with me, like, why are you tapping yourself on your head? I'm like, oh, just resetting onto the next one.
Yeah.
Because the faster you can just give yourself permission to say, hey, that's okay, then the better you can be on the next one. But that's in everything in life. If you have a bad parenting moment, if you miss your alarm clock and it's like you're a little bit late for work. Typically, a lot of people will dwell on that, sets them back for a while, where if you're just like, okay, let's go. It's in the past. Like the rear view mirror needs to be really small.
Yeah.
And then
that's such a valuable thing. I love that book. He talks about this neutral thinking where you can't be hyper positive all the time. And you can't be negative because you're not going to be, productive. But it's like this neutral feeling like bad things are going to happen. And I am so grateful for this mentality. It's so funny that we're having this conversation. Just today, my 16-year-old daughter was driving my car. And she got rear-ended.
Oh, no.
And I was like, all
in the Tesla?
Yeah. Like, I should have bought her her own car, a junker.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have let her drive my car. Yeah, all of these things, but instead I could have like screamed and yelled, but instead I just said, stuff happens.
Yeah.
We move on. And I just think that it's in those moments. I remember when I was a kid, this has stuck with me for years. It was a school event where we went and stayed. It's called, what was it called? Boy State. You ever heard of that?
No.
Okay, so it was like this opportunity that they sent high school kids or middle school kids to learn about government. And you kind of campaign at this 2-day seminar thing. And we decided that it would be really fun to pull some pranks that night. And so we had filled up wet paper towels with shaving cream, and we were in this dorm at a university, and we were coming down, and I remember kind of chickening out a little bit, and so I underhand tossed mine, but it hit the leader who was kind of supervising,
no,
like right in the face. And later, like they caught us and they brought us down and they were lecturing us, and he's like, whoever threw one at my face was a rocket. They should be playing baseball. I'm like,
You're like, that was underhand, dude, but you couldn't admit it, right? You're like,
yeah, but he said something to me that was so powerful. He said, hey, listen. And he like, that fatherly moment, put his hand on my shoulder. He's like, there's going to be a time when a teenager does something that just makes you so mad. And I want you to remember this time, and how are you going to react? And it was like all of those feels today.
all your, yeah.
And so it's like, you're right. When you're facing with rejection over and over again, it's like, how do you quickly reset? And I really like that. A physical, whether it's flipping a band or tapping your head or whatever it is, I think too often it's eating a donut or binge watching a TV series.
I just eat a gallon of ice cream and then I'm good.
So it does take discipline to really refine that. But that's awesome.
Yeah, and I think because even that's going to a different place with, I remember the owner of Moxie told me a story one time. He just went and bought a brand new Raptor.
Yeah.
And he had a 4-year-old, took a baseball bat, goes out like first week and he's like, what is that noise? Goes outside and he's like, right? And everything you want to do is like,
yeah.
Right? But at the end of the day, like, I guess it's just perspective.
Yeah.
Right? It's like what you said. If it's like, hey, things happen, it is what it is.
Yeah.
And so it's okay. But I think a lot of times, especially in today's world, we get too caught up in everything's so fast. Everything's like me. Where if it's like, hey, how would I feel if I was treating people the golden rule? Like all those things actually of being a good human being to everybody, which is just perspective. If you can step back. So I actually like coming out here, having a beautiful view, and it like gives you perspective again. You're like, hey, hitting the baseball bat on the truck, like there could be things could be way worse.
Yeah, my daughter was healthy. She wasn't hurt.
Yeah.
And that was more important to me.
Yeah, perspective, like that's awesome.
And that's one thing that I really appreciate. So, I mentioned that I did a year of sales, and I was with a stellar group. Most of the people who were with that group have gone on to do bigger and better things, and it was because of the leader. But I knew a lot of other groups that were very money focused. It's like, come out and you can get your BMW, you can get your Audi like after one summer.
That's the sales culture for sure.
Yeah, and there is a part of that, in that door-to-door sales culture, but I've always been impressed with your approach of this vision and this perspective. I had the opportunity to go through the training process, and it was not like, hey, this is what you got to say. It was, hey, where do you see yourself?
Yep.
Create this perfect day, and then we're going to help facilitate that through this action. And to me, it was like, well, this is completely different. And so, just for those who are watching, like, here's a man who practices what he preaches. It is all about that perspective, and that's what drives the desire to be successful and to get that sale.
Well, and that's why for me, like, money's a magnifier, right? And so if you're a really bad person when you start this off and you get a lot of money, you just have way more capacity to do terrible things.
Right.
Right. And I'm not saying so just to clarify, I'm not saying buying nice cars is bad, but I know a lot of people, if you get too money centered, that can be dangerous. That's where you get making millions and millions and you're just like, man, I'm just not happy.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you are a really good person, then when you have money, you're going to be able to go give back more. The money actually doesn't matter as much. You're just more fulfilled because you're doing better things. And so the way that you do that, at least from my experience, has been not focusing on the money.
Yeah.
It's focusing on who you are, where you want to go, who do you want to become, what are the things you're doing to become that type of person. And that's where becomes like a fulfilled, satisfying feelings, right?
Yeah, and how do you marry that with the, let's call it the pitch.
Sure.
When you're on the door, or the systems that you talk about, because in my mind, those are two separate things. You've got this perspective and this vision, but then you have the practicality of, well, you actually got to go do something in order to achieve that.
Yeah, so some people, just to make sure I'm understanding, tell me if this is kind of what you're talking about. A lot of people view people as like a means to an end.
Yeah.
I need you to buy my service no matter what because I need money.
Yeah.
Right? Versus the way that I approach is like put people first.
Yeah.
Right? Because
Yep.
like I don't know if it makes sense for you to use my service. I want it to be, and I'm going to go do everything I can to be very persuasive to tell you why.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, if that means you're not able to feed the family, if it genuinely is like, let's say it's pest control and someone's very allergic to whatever, I hope, and I tell all my reps this, I want you to be able to look yourself in the mirror at the end of the summer and like feel good about what you just did.
Yeah.
Like if you go make a couple $100,000, but you're like, dude, I just lied to a bunch of old ladies and I feel terrible. Like, please, that's a failure, right?
Yeah,
Where if you can go feel good about the work you did, even if you made less, right? But the irony there is people who do what I'm saying, they don't make less, they make more.
Yeah.
But it's because you're actually out to serve, like, hey, I don't know if this can be a good fit for you, but I would love to show you what I have. Maybe it's going to work, maybe not.
Yeah.
Because you're actually caring about the people. So if you go people first, and that's why being principle-centered versus money-centered is extremely important, or else you'll just be, you'll become a me monster, you'll just go off you'll do anything you can to get a quick buck, really.
Yeah. I know that this consumes a lot of your time, but I'm curious how these principles relate to your personal life, in your personal development, in your family.
Yeah, so it's in everything. And a couple things, like I went and started jujitsu recently.
Oh, cool.
Within like the very end of last year. And I realized, because I told Riley, I've always been like, I love going to the gym and stuff. And even lately, I'm like, I think I'd rather go to jujitsu than the gym. And she's like, what happened to you, right? But the reason that I've liked it so much, and this is kind of a little bit of a tangent, but it's because it goes back to the same principles of like, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, people are like choking me out, and I'm just like wanting to call my mom, like, help me, right?
Right.
But it's such a disciplined thing because there's just certain principles of making and keeping commitments, having an integrity, which goes into doing the things that you were saying you're going to do, hard work.
Yeah.
So those are the principles. If you're going to ask like the personal life, if I can go to hard work, which is why I like jujitsu, which is why I like knocking doors or training people to do hard things because it's uncomfortable. Hard work, integrity, making and keeping commitments. If you can have that as your foundation and teach my kids that, then the sales skills and all that other stuff, that will be like a branch off the foundation, right? Because if you do the opposite and you're very persuasive, but then you don't have that root, that goes back to the same thing. And so at home, the things I try to focus on, and it's like my morning routine, is I try to do everything, like especially when I'm out knocking doors and stuff, I'm kind of weird, but I'm talking like I eat the same thing every day at the same time every day.
Okay.
It's like factory robot kind of going in. Just because it goes, there's like also the things, so like how you do anything is how you do everything.
Yeah.
So it's really, you can't like turn it on.
How you play.
Well, it's really hard to turn it on and turn it off. If I was like, hey, at home, I eat my gallon of ice cream 3 times a day, and then I just sleep until whenever I want. And then when my wife needs help, I usually don't help her. But then when I go to work, I'm awesome. It's like, it does not work that way, right? And so very much a common question people ask me a lot too is like, well, how do you balance family life and then work? And I've heard a couple of people answer it this way, and it's what I've piggyback off is like, you don't. I think you just have to go in all in at everything.
Yeah.
So something if my wife listens to this, then she'd probably say, hey, you are still definitely working on that one. But what I'm trying to do is like being more present where I am.
Yeah.
And so like if I'm home, it's not my time to be awesome at work. It's my time to be the best dad ever. So balance is you have to just be extremely intentional. When I'm doing it my best, I'm planning like every 15 to 30 minutes and I'm knowing, and my calendar's color coordinated. Hey, dad mode, husband mode, gospel mode or like church mode, community mode, work mode, leadership mode. And then it's just being where you are so that you can be excellent always. Right. But sometimes it definitely does bleed over. It's like I'm at home and I'm taking calls and I'm like, I'm sorry, he needs help. Right. And so I'm definitely not saying I'm perfect, but I do know that I don't think if we are trying to be the best version of ourselves, you don't necessarily need balance. You just need to be very intentional.
Yeah. I love that intention. I love the lessons that I learn as I have conversations with people. And I was meeting with this couple, Jeff and Jamie Downs, and they have an app about streaking and like daily wins.
Oh, yeah.
And one thing that we discussed and talked about was how important, like we so often equate time to quality. Like, oh, I need to spend X amount of hours in order to feel like I'm a success. And that can go in any direction. Like, I'll take a Saturday and I'll be like, oh, I spent all day with my kids, but how much of that was watching a 2.5 hour movie? And it's
Totally.
like we didn't really gain anything. We were just present together.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is like being intentional, and whether it's 15 minutes and maybe that 15 minutes is so impactful,
Yeah.
but you're there, you're present, you're intentional, versus like, oh yeah, I've got to make X amount of calls in order to feel like I hit my,
Yeah.
what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
So
Well, I've also heard stories too where like if I have like the owner he tells a story all the time too where he had two managers and one manager he worked because they're salary based and he would go in and he would work 3 hours and he would get a ton of work done and do everything fantastic. The other guy, he would go work 12 hours a day and he would barely get everything done.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey man, I'm working really hard. I think I should be rewarded more.
Yeah.
And he's like, hey, in this scenario, you actually just being intentional, being very like productive, that would be better than you feeling like, it's like how long is your line in the water?
Yeah.
Right? It's like, hey, I was sitting at the lake all day and it's like, yeah, but you were walking around and the line wasn't in the water versus like very intentional. It's the same analogy of like, how long are you doing the thing? Because I've had times where I've made awesome deposits to my kids in 10 minutes and I've had times where they don't even feel like I'm present. I've been there for 4 hours.
Right.
And they're like, you just been on your phone the whole time. And I'm like, yeah, I suck, sorry. Right? But it's like, so yeah, just intent. And it's hard. It's really hard. But
and
I think as long as you're trying is more than a lot of people do.
I'm finding more as I've transitioned to working from home, it's like, I don't want them to feel let down. I don't want them to feel like I'm ignoring them. And so it is hard. And I know that, like you said, when you're home, you're still going to get calls.
Working at home makes a whole new beast to all of this for sure.
But what are some of the things that you do on a regular basis to kind of maintain that? You already talked a little bit about being kind of that, hey, I eat the same thing every day.
Yeah, and that's obviously the very extreme version of like when I'm out in the element. I just think because everyone's like, oh, do you like the trending? Do you have to take an ice bath every day?
Yeah.
If you take an ice bath every day, you're making $1 million, and it's like, nope, right? It's like, well, I've did it for 30 days. Why am I not rich?
Right.
So the principle is it doesn't. My opinion, there's certain things that would matter. Spiritual. Help me on this? It's like spiritual, physical, mental, emotional. There's like four main pillars that we need to do. But so I think if you're just checking those off. So for me, whether it's like a quick prayer, for others maybe it's meditating. Something physical, that could be 5 push-ups, that could be going on a walk, that could be benching 300 pounds. So like everybody has their variety of what that is. I do think it's important to get up and get moving, but I think the most important thing above all is just consistency. Yeah. It's just the consistency.
I think we're going to get him on a trail. I think you should run 100 miles.
No, okay.
I'll help you.
I could walk, maybe.
We call it trail running, but we walk.
I'll do some trail walking for sure.
We do a lot of snacks.
Yeah, if you give me some Quest bars and some trail mix, I'm in.
Okay, you're in. 100 miles. Here we come.
That'd be fun.
So you love the gym, but now you're doing jujitsu. But do you still get to the gym?
Yeah, for sure. I still do both.
Yeah.
When I first started, I thought my arms were gonna fall off from like all the grip strength and stuff, and I was just not accustomed to that. So I still try to do both. I just think it's really fun to go. It's the same thing as it's another way to feel fulfilled. It's like I'm learning something new.
Yeah,
and really you just continually go learn. And so yeah, I still try to stay pretty active, whether that's walks with the kids, bike with the kids, the gym. I do on the days I'm not doing jujitsu. Then I go to the gym and vice versa and stuff. So
cool. Is there anything that's like I have to do this or my day's not complete?
I'm not trying to make this like a spiritual podcast at all, but prayer.
Okay.
For whatever reason, it's like if there's anything else it's like, hey, if nothing else, say your prayers, because I definitely believe like that, and then like positive affirmations, because I think those are for those if it's like, hey, I'm not super religious, like positive affirmations is super helpful. So like, for example, I was the top rep in the entire company a couple years ago, and I remember I felt so weird. There's this app called ThinkUp. Yeah. And you record yourself, and it'll repeat back your own voice, and you can just read what it says. So like some of them, it's like, my kids, I'm so grateful for Boston. I'm so grateful for Benson. I'm so grateful for Oakley, for my kids. Yeah. And the other ones was like, I'm so happy and grateful that I'm the top rep in the company, and it hadn't even happened yet. Yeah. But I listened to it every morning and night, and then I remember when it finally happened, that like everyone's like, how you feel? And I was like, I knew that was happening back in March, or at least I told myself every day it had already happened. And so I would just say, in answer to your question, is just be kind to yourself. And just have time, because that's where that perspective comes, whether it's prayer, meditation. Yeah. If you can do that, that gives you appropriate time to say like, hey, what matters most today.
Yeah.
So when there's a car accident, you're like, hey,
this is what mattered.
I'm glad you're okay.
Yep.
I'm really glad you're okay.
Spend a little bit more time on this being kind to yourself, because I think this is so important. I think a lot of times, especially as dads and fathers who are trying to provide for their family, and really anybody who is trying to excel at anything, we're super critical on ourselves.
Yeah. Well, especially when we're just so driven. Anything that so I'll share this really quick. There's this it's called the gap versus the gain. So if you take, for example, you start from where you were. So let's just say, for easy sakes, like a year ago.
Yeah.
Then I go take where I currently am, and then I take where I want to be.
Yeah.
So this is the gap, is where I currently am versus where I want to be. So right now I'm at
the distance between there that you haven't quite
exactly. I'm at 50 reps. I want to have 100, right? That's the gap. If I focus on that, I'm typically bummed out. Right? Because, I should have, I could have. I met with a life coach for a while, and he'd always say, don't should on yourself.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I should have done this. He's like, hey, don't should on yourself. And I was like, what'd you just say to me?
Exactly.
Caught me off guard. But so yeah, same thing. It's like, if you focus on that versus the gain, hey, a year ago, I was at, let's say in a scenario, it's like, hey, you were at 15 guys. Now you're at 50. If you focus on the gain, you're way more happy, and I give myself permission to be a human being. Hey, Brayden, it's okay. Like, look how far you've come. Versus, we're always, especially when you're driven, you're always gonna, because you're always climbing. Yeah. It's like I was the top rep in the company, and the next year, everyone's like, hey, who are you? And I'm like, what the heck? Like, sales is brutal, right? It's like, I gotta go do it again. I gotta go prove myself again.
Right.
But until you go find that fulfillment, it's like, hey, it's not about that. Look how far you've come.
Yeah.
Look what you've done. And it's like the same analogy. One of my reps does this. He put a picture, his baby picture on his phone as the background. And I was like, what is that for? And he goes, like, for example, when do you ever see a kid learning to walk? And you're like, hey, dummy, stand, like, why haven't you figured this out yet? Right. And it's like, nobody ever does that. It's like, so cute. Oh, you only get mad when they stop trying.
Right.
And you're like, come on, you're fine. Figure it out.
Keep going.
And then we do something, we fail, and we're like, I'm so dumb. I'm so stupid. Oh, I'm worthless. Where it's like, and so for him, he's like, I just got to remind myself I'm that little kid. And for me, it was kind of, like, I actually kind of get like goosebumps talking about it, because for me, it's like, oh yeah, it is okay to give yourself permission to be a human being.
Yeah.
You're still learning, and quit being so hard on yourself.
Yeah.
With that being said, I'm like extremely hard on myself, and I'm like giving myself, my own advice here, but.
It is a balancing act, because I think that's part of us that we get that drive from, like, hey, we do want to succeed, and we do want to reach a higher level. You talked about reaching your full potential. Like, okay, well, how do we do that? It's not by just sitting around eating the ice cream, but at the same time, it's forgiving ourselves, and this is flowing really nicely, because it's all coming together in this fact that we talked about just resetting. Good things are going to happen, bad things are going to happen, but we're just going to keep going.
Yeah. Well, here's an example I'll share quick. Is I was selling in Dallas, Texas for 6 years, and one of my things on my vision board at home is my own boat. And I always tell my wife, I want to just have our boat so that we can be able to go hang out with the kids on the lake, and it'll be super fun.
Yeah.
So anyway, long story short, this was 2 years ago. We got a boating membership in Dallas, Texas, and we were out on the lake one day. I was with my family, my wife, and we had a couple sales guys out there. And they were surfing, they were having a ton of fun. And I remember I was sitting there thinking, I was like, man, one day I'm going to have my own boat like this, and it's going to be awesome, and I'm going to be able to go spend time with my family on the water and with my friends. And then I was like, wait a second.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, you're literally doing that right now.
Yeah.
That was like the exact same thing that you said you wanted. It just came in a different, that's why I believe in like positive affirmations, things. It's like, it will come into existence, because it was just in a different way than I thought. I'll probably, still want to go get a boat, but it's like, the point there is like, I almost missed the moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
I literally was so focused on that gap of, I can't wait for this to be my own boat, that I was like, dude, you're literally paying you're getting exactly your time on the boat with your kids and your friends. And so I think we just have to be extremely careful not to miss the mark of those things, because I remember just laughing at myself. I was like, one day I was like, this is the day. This is the moment. It's like, this is the time. Yeah. And so that one kind of hit me for that exact same thing.
I love that story of the fisherman on the island who goes out and catches the fish every day, eats it with his family, and then somebody comes along like, oh, well, if you did this, you could catch 2 fish. And for what purpose? Well, to spend time with my family. So,
yeah, exactly. It's like, don't miss the mark.
Yeah, that is so good. I've got a couple of rapid fire questions here, and I write these down so I don't forget.
That's world's tiniest notebook right there.
I love it. Okay. Do you have a favorite pump up song?
I'm weird, and I have like the biggest celebrity crush on Morgan Wallen right now.
Okay.
You guys ever listen to country music?
Not.
So I've
not
been
much.
down this deep rabbit hole of
Okay.
country music. So I've listened to a lot of those. That's more of like my chill vibes.
Yeah.
But I'm also kind of weird, and a lot of the guys, they think I'm weird because I like go out to the area and stuff in silence.
Nice.
And they're like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Just being present for a second, man." And they're like, "Can't we just play some whatever?" And so off the top of my head, I can't think of any that come right to my mind.
Yeah.
I'm sure there'll be some after. I'm like, "Oh, I love this song." But I listen to a lot of silence, a lot of positive affirmations, and podcasts.
I love it.
I listen to a lot of.
That's why we get along so well, because my kids, they, if we're going on a long trip, we'll take 2 cars because we've got so many kids.
Yeah.
And they're like, I don't want to ride with Dad.
Yeah.
It's a silent. They call it the silent
Bored.
retreat, where we're just sitting in silence.
Yeah,
and-
yeah, it's nice though.
Yeah, I love it.
It's super
I
nice.
love it. Okay. Do you have, I know that it's kind of an energy. Do you have a energy drink, or do you have a different way to kind of maintain your energy?
Oh, I am currently a recovering caffeine
Okay.
addict,
Good.
and
good.
by that I mean I'm still fully and it's like I could quit anytime. I just don't want to yet, right?
Yeah.
No, in all seriousness, I go back and forth because I do try to like calm it down.
Yeah.
I'm like loving the Alani energy drinks. Have you ever
Okay.
tried those?
I haven't, but I've been.
They're probably like the
recommended.
classic white chick.
Yeah.
Everyone's like, "You're having the Alani drinks? Why not get a Monster?" And I'm like, "I like it."
Yeah.
But yeah, I do that, or I'll do like a pre-workout in the morning. But
Nice.
I try to only do one or the other.
Nice. Yeah, I am a Celsius guy. I've been a Celsius guy for years, but
Yeah, I've heard those are fantastic. What do you do it before you go trail running? Because that sounds like a
I
sketchy idea.
similar to you. I'm trying to cut back, so I'm a big Huberman
Yeah,
fan, and
yeah.
so I get 200 milligrams in the morning, and then I don't do anything else the rest
Because
of the
he
day.
says anything past 400 is where you're
Yeah.
kind of sketchy, right?
Yeah.
200 is still plenty if you think like that's a lot.
For me, and I've because I have quickly learned that caffeine will amplify my emotions.
Yeah.
So if I'm feeling anxious, I slip into almost like a depression.
Oh yeah.
If I'm confident and amped, then I'm like, let's go.
Yeah.
So I really have to be careful with it, and
Yeah.
so sometimes I'll try to transition to like a 40 milligram or 80
Oh yeah.
milligram.
I think for me, I have to have some version of like ADHD.
Mm.
So when I take it, I'm just like it just helps me mellow out.
My
a little
wife
bit, actually.
at 9 o'clock at night can
Yeah, they call it a monster nap. She's like, "What are you doing? It's 9." I'm like, "I'm about to have a monster nap."
Yeah.
Wake up feeling good,
That's
take deep
wild.
sleep.
As well. What is the most awkward moment you've had on the door?
Oh gosh. Um I've had so many. Do you know what's one that just comes to mind that's pretty easy is when I knocked the door and this person thought that I was coming to like fix the dishwasher.
Oh, and they're
And she's
"Come
like,
on
"Hey,
in."
come on in." I was like, "Heck yeah, this is a lay down. This is gonna be an easy sell." I go, and she's like, "So with the washer dryer," I say, "Hey, first off, super nice to meet you. Second off, I don't think you think like I'm not who you think I am."
Yeah.
And she's like, "What are you talking about?" I was like, "I'm past. Get out of here." And I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry," right? So that's the first one that comes to mind because I know I've had that so many times. I'm like, "Hey, just to
Sure.
clarify, were you expecting someone?" "Well, yeah." And
I'm so glad that you're here. Wow, you're early.
Yeah.
I am.
I'm like, "Cool, just sign here." No, just kidding.
That's great. Have you ever been in a situation where you didn't feel safe?
I've had a lot of guns pulled on me,
Okay.
Yeah.
That happens more often than.
especially in Texas.
Yeah.
That's how they, especially my first couple years, just because I was so relentless. I probably just didn't even know where to lay off because
Yeah.
it's like, I just want to like make sure I'm not exhausting all options. And then there was times it was like 10:30 at night, and I was so hungry for cells.
Yeah.
Sorry, I know I'm the person that you guys absolutely hate in this scenario, but I just wanted to hit my goals so bad that it's like if there was porch lights on or garage open, I was still knocking doors.
Yeah.
And rightfully so. I had a couple guns pulled on me. And as soon as I was like, "Hey, just the pest control guy," they're like, "Okay." But for sure, when you get a gun coming up on you, no matter what, you're like, "It's not that serious,
Yeah.
just a bug guy." Right?
I did security systems, and it was kind of our motto, like go to the scariest neighborhoods because they're the ones
Yeah.
that need it the most. And,
Yeah.
and so yeah.
He pulls a gun out. You're like, "Sounds like you got your security figured out. I'll be on my way."
Exactly. Okay, here's a good one. If you could only recommend one book to your sales team, what book are you recommending?
I'm just gonna kind of go off the one that comes to mind the most right now is The Power of One More by Ed Milet. Because the power of one, it's literally a principle that goes into everything. One more rep, whether it's working out, one more door,
Yeah.
one more. That's where you have to be extremely careful to not focus on the gap too much, but remember the gain.
Yeah.
But I think the power of one more is phenomenal, just
Yeah.
because it adopts a mindset of just continually getting better every day. Which that's my team motto, is I always tell everybody. I'm like, hey, better every day, better every day. And that fits well in line with that.
That's cool. If you were to knock on your door, your younger self's door, what would you tell him?
Basically, to give myself some advice. Pretty much what we've been talking about, which is, and not even to get emotional, but it's like, hey, don't be so hard on yourself.
Yeah.
Don't be so hard on yourself. Everything's going to be okay. Because, and just, it's what I've learned in my old age.
Sure.
But it's like, over the years, it's the same thing that I felt like from my younger self. It's like, I didn't ever give myself permission to like make mistakes. Just always so hard on myself. I didn't even really like, I would have big accomplishments and I wouldn't even enjoy them. Yeah. Actually, because it was just that the next thing. And so if I could go back, and it's the same thing I'd say to anybody listening, is like, we are all so hard on ourselves that if you can just really focus on the gain and really focus on being better every day, controlling the controllables, go from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm, and everything is going to be okay and everything happens for a reason, then it's way easier to feel fulfilled and be happy. And it's not all about like the biggest, the baddest. It's like, it's okay to just do your best, because this goes back to, it's like, if you go take someone who's making $20K a year, they're going to look at the person making $100K a year and be super bummed out and sad. The $100K person looks at the $500,000 guy and he's super bummed out. $500,000 guy looks at Elon Musk and he's really bummed out. And then it never ends. Like, where would that ever end? And so if you can just be happy in your own skin and just really be intentional with like, where do you want to be in 5 years, and are you getting closer to that? Do you feel like you're living the life that you want to live? Are you super intentional? And then it's way easier just to be happier and more fulfilled.
That's so good. I think that is a great place to end. It's just perfect. If I know that you didn't come here to promote anything. You just came here because you're a good guy. But if you are looking for a good experience, out on the doors, doing something hard, I would highly recommend Brayden Searle.
Please do. Look me up on Instagram and find me.
Yeah, but any other parting advice or thoughts?
No, I would just say, first off, thank you.
Yeah.
And this is so fun just to step away. I've never done a podcast that's like this cool of, people are have to be like, is this a real background?
No green screens.
Yeah, which is super cool. But no, I would just finish by, and again, not to make this cheesy at all, but that you're capable of anything that you set your mind to.
Yeah.
Don't be so hard on yourself. Don't take things too seriously, and just enjoy the journey.
I love it. Let's give the people here, just so you know that we're not messing around.
Yeah.
Here is here's this side. So beautiful sunset. We've got the mountains over here, and then just because this is mean grit, we're on the side of a cliff here, so we don't mess around. But hey, thanks for watching. We really appreciate it. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.